That's money that is just ready to bank. There's no reason why you shouldn't test those on an ad that looks like it's going to scale, because those are proven and they will just consistently add anywhere from 20K to 200K to your ad spend. It's so funny because it used to be like the thing that we used all the time. It was like the thing to do first, but I think it's worth adding because it does make a difference. Even though it's like a weird test, you wouldn't think it would do anything to lift it, but it does.
And this is true for creative strategists, because that's just something that, it's a habit we all fall into. And so keeping it top of mind could make a big difference in how your ads scale. I don't think that every team here at our agency is necessarily testing almost like a go-to test. But I know for Sammy's team, that's something they test early on, and it can make a big difference. And so if you've been running your own ads, you know how hard it can be to scale an ad to over $1 million without ROAS taking a nosedive. So what is the secret sauce to taking an ad that's showing early signs of life and turning it into $1 million plus ad that continues to scale? I'm Kira Hug, creative strategist and associate copy chief at TNT Performance Agency.
And I'm Christy Ingkavet, creative strategist and associate copy chief at TNT Performance Agency. And today on the Scaling Lab, we will go into the science and art of scaling ads to beyond $1 million. So let's dive in.
All right. So I know we're going to get into some specific case studies, and then we're going to kind of talk more high level about patterns we've seen. And I think a good place to start before we get into that is just, how do you even know if an ad shows potential? What are you looking for, Christy, when you see an ad and you're like, this is great, we should really try to scale this and do additional testing?
So the first thing is, within the first week or two, you look at how much it's spent, and there should be a clear sign that it's spent enough money. And enough money would probably be about $1,000 to $2,000. So there's enough data that you can see how it's performing. The ROAS should be above or at ROAS for that client, meaning that usually our clients have a scale of what's allowable ROAS and what they prefer for ROAS. If you see an ad though that's spent a couple $1,000s and it's doing really well, say like 200 ROAS, then you know that that's going to be something that you'd want to scale.
Yeah. And sometimes too, if you see in a campaign, if we're looking at a campaign and you see multiple variations in that campaign performing, and they all have significant ROAS and decent spend, maybe a variation of spend, because most of the spend is going to one of those ads, not to all of them. But whenever I see that, 4 out of the 6 ads in that campaign have hit ROAS target, I'm like, this is a great sign, rather than just one ad out of maybe the 6, which can still perform and you can go really far with that one. But it's a really good indicator if it's like multiple variations are working here. We know there's something that's really connecting with this audience.
Yeah, that's true. The problem is that usually Facebook will do its thing, as some of our performance managers say, and like just latch onto one ad. So sometimes you need to take the ones that look like they still have signal, but they're just not getting spend, and put them in a separate campaign to see if they'll start to spend.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. I feel like a year and a half ago, that we would see that, where it was like even spend across the campaign, but that has changed with the algorithm change. So that is where it's helpful to look at low spend, but a good sign. And like you said, separating it to see if it can perform. Anything else, Christy, that you're looking for? Maybe even an ad that doesn't have, it's not hitting performance target ROAS, but it does have potential. What else are you looking for?
Look at the beginning of the ad, because that's really a signal if people are going to watch it or not. So 3 and 10 second engagement, if it's super high, then that's something to look at. Maybe there's something else in the ad that's making it drop off, but it still has potential. So what is it in the ad that is going to make it work better?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So at that point, you have some early indication that this ad could scale to $1 million. Some of the ads we're going to talk about today have scaled to $9 million. And this is looking back over the last year. So once you see that, what are you thinking about at that point? Before we get into these case studies, Christy, kind of just like, what are you thinking about? What are you looking to do next? And then we can get into these specifics.
The usual test that we do, because they're really fast and easy, is you add clickbait on the front, which other agencies call hooks or intros. So you do that and you see if that'll just like lift performance a little bit more, get more people engaged so that they watch longer, and so that you get better click through and purchases. Another test that we do frequently is a hook test. So you see the ads are generally working, but some of them are not. The engagement is very low in the beginning. So you get writers to write maybe more specific hooks that go into what the ad's really talking about, because sometimes the hooks are kind of vague and maybe they just need to be like freshened up that way. And then the other things we might do that are also kind of quick tests are requesting new visuals to make engagement better, and putting background music in.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can talk about all of that in a couple minutes because we have pulled kind of more of an analysis of the top, let's say, 10 ads that have done over $1 million at our agency to see what's been tested the most. And so background music definitely does show up for some of these ads, but it is interesting to see the mix of what's been tested and what has helped these ads scale. So we can get to that in a couple minutes. But first, I would love to talk about a specific case study. We're going to call it by the CV name, the core video name, which is Artery Cement. And Christy, I believe this is, CJ wrote this, one of the writers on your team. And this is an ad that scaled to nearly $2 million through YouTube and Facebook over the last year. And so I'd love to hear from you since you work directly with CJ. And I know he was able to share some insights with us as well, as far as like what specifically scaled that ad.
Hey, just a quick interruption to remind you that there's a link in the description of this episode for you to book a free strategy call with our team of specialized experts, whether it's creative, media buying, or conversion rate optimization that is causing a bottleneck in your business right now. We'd love to help. So use that link in the description below and book your free strategy call. Now let's get back to it.
So Artery Cement is an interesting ad because it features a authority figure as a doctor who's talking about what's actually happening in the arteries when you're having high blood pressure issues. So it's scientific, but it's like not dumbed down, but it's more simple. It's more simple for people to understand. And it had the really cool mechanism called artery cement, which makes it very easy to remember, like, oh, this is what's going on in my arteries. So that's one of the reasons why it works so well. But how do we keep it running and going? We did a lot of different tests. I mean, one of the easiest things that we do is like putting more clickbaits on it, changing some of the hooks up. Spokesperson test is something that is worth doing a lot. We started that ad with an AI spokesperson and we tested with human talent, and that's something that will increase the longevity of an ad. One thing we did also was just putting it on YouTube, and it worked right away. And I think in this case, what might have happened was that it got shut off at some point for a compliance reason, because I think there might have been something in the ad that YouTube deems as like too scary or too graphic or whatever. And so in those cases, we just cut out some of the visuals that maybe seemed too over the top. But there were we did a lot of different tests on it. Another thing that can work really well is a Frankenstein, and that is taking part of another ad and putting it on the front of the working ad. So that's one test that we do frequently. And those are some of the things that we've done. I'm trying to see what else we did.
Yeah, it looks like just when I look at the breakdown of what's been tested on Artery Cement, I mean, nearly it's about $700,000 in ad spend on YouTube out of about 2 million total. So, I mean, nearly half from YouTube spend, which is why YouTube is so important to move ads over to YouTube, which we talk about in episode 20, all about Google compliance and the value of moving ads over to YouTube. But clearly, like, that was a big needle mover for this ad. And it's interesting that you mentioned compliance, because I do wonder when it was flagged and pulled off of YouTube, because I see there's about $24,000 in ad spend on compliance testing. So it's like that kind of tells part of the journey too, as far as what needed to happen to get it back on YouTube, whether that was initially or a little bit later.
I think that was later, and it probably ran on YouTube right away, because it is like an authority telling a story about, you know, a scientific mechanism. So it looks like content if you just look at it, you know, objectively, and you're not, you know, you're just like scrolling or whatever. So, and it is telling a story about like what's actually happening when you have high blood pressure. So I think that's what happened. Yeah.
And it's also like what we talked about in the compliance episode, again, where some of it changes from month to month. So even though this ad was running maybe initially a year ago, whenever it launched, a couple months in, it might get flagged for compliance, because we know that compliance tolerance changes from month to month too. So that is something compliance testing did show up on many of these $1 million plus ads. It also looks like this one's interesting because it used toppers. I mean, there's significant ad spend on topper testing, $257,000 in topper testing as one of the second top testing elements for this ad. And that's something that I didn't see for when I was looking across the top 10 ads. Like, I didn't see topper testing for all of these. So it seems like an opportunity that you and CJ found that maybe missed.
I think I know which one actually did the best. It was one of these where it's like an actor talking to direct to camera about something that he saw online. And so it was just like, oh, I had this problem and I couldn't figure it out. And then this person in this group that I'm in sent me a message about this video that was frankly kind of shocking, but I'm so glad that I watched it, and here's why you should watch it. And that led into the video, and that I think helped lift it quite a bit.
Yeah, that social proof and
Hmm.
intrigue from that topper kept it scaling. And so that's something that I think we can think about more on, especially like on my team too, just how we can use toppers when we are scaling. Are we even testing a topper at all? And if so, are we testing enough of them? That's a good opportunity. And then I know CJ had mentioned that there was iterations on the topper. So it wasn't just launching the topper, but then it was starting with a particular avatar and then testing other avatars. And then ultimately, I think building the AI team at TNT built a custom avatar for this topper. So it's great to see that transformation too, as this ad scaled, going from like a standard avatar to a custom avatar.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that can lift an ad quite a bit if you have especially a custom one. The problem with using the avatars that are offered in some of these tools is that everyone's using them. So after a while, it becomes very obvious that you're using an AI avatar because people have seen them on 1,000 other ads offering all different things. So when you can create something custom that looks more aligned with whatever offer you have, that will create a big lift.
Yeah, and it also is interesting because we've seen certain avatars perform extremely well across multiple offers. And we have had conversations wondering if it's just because it's such a familiar face that helps with the performance, that people are used to seeing that face and it's almost like a trusted face. So sometimes it does help to use an avatar that has performed well and is more visible online. And then other times it makes sense to avoid being that familiar face that's on every single ad and create your own, or find an avatar or talent that maybe is less visible online. So it seems like it could go either way. But for this one, custom worked well.
Yeah, so an example of that where an avatar got worn out, it was actually an AI voiceover, the TikTok voice Adam, because everybody was using Adam. So I was using Adam a couple of years ago for my ads because I knew he worked, and then he stopped working because everyone heard him everywhere.
He's probably working. I wonder if it's a cycle and now he's working again.
He might be, I don't know.
We'll have to test to see if he's back, but he does have a great voice. I love Adam's voice, but yeah, it was too much Adam. Every commercial I saw too was Adam. And then I know another test that CJ mentioned was widening, and I think you mentioned this, like widening the hook of the topper so that he could reach a broader audience. And once the ad started to scale, it was almost like rather than niching down, CJ wanted to broaden it and cast a wider net. And so he created a hook. The hook is, if you sleep on your side and have high blood pressure, this is for you, or watch this. Something like that just was so broad, you can reach a larger audience.
Still working. We've used it on multiple ads also. That hook just works because it's intriguing. Like, okay.
It is intriguing. I've seen that this hook show up in my team too. It keeps showing up and I'm like, is this really working? But
well, it's especially, I mean, the whole side sleeping, like, what the heck does that mean? Am I in trouble?
Right. Yeah, it does grab your attention. Overall, though, it sounds like the script was working from day one, which, probably most of these ads we're going to talk about, it was working to some degree from day one. And then expanding it to YouTube via compliance testing, and then adding the toppers, customizing the toppers, casting a wider net is what ultimately pushed this ad to nearly $2 million over the last year. And I don't know when this one launched, so it could have actually been 6 months ago.
It might have been. I mean, it's just spent like crazy, I think. Yeah, I think it was probably about 6 months ago.
Okay. Anything else, Christy, that you would add? Like any other takeaways from this specific ad scaling experience that could be useful?
I mean, the biggest overall general takeaway is that you really don't know until you start doing a lot of tests on it. And it's worthwhile if you see signal, because finding something that works initially is such a huge leap, to take. And then it's so much easier to scale once you have that initial asset that's working.
Yep. And we have another case study that we can talk through. The writer of this one is Sammy, and she's actually going to come on the show in a couple of episodes to talk about this case study in more detail. But at a higher level, I just kind of want to run through some of the tests just to kind of show that process and where that team and Sammy, like where her head was at as far as testing when they saw early signs. And so for this one, this is for a gut offer. And we'll call this one Discredit Fiber. And something that we didn't talk about with the previous one is that this is a format that is proven across our agency for multiple offers. And it's a format where it's myth busting and it's really speaking to the skeptical viewer and a style and structure that we know works. And so, Christy, for the previous one we just talked about, Artery Cement, is that a proven format as well?
It has become a proven format, actually.
Okay. It speaks
So
on its own.
it started as a format that worked for a very specific type of offer for dogs, and then it has been
Oh.
adapted now for human offers, basically. And now it's worked across offers, yes.
Okay. And I think that format conversation is something that we've touched on this podcast already and previously, and we will continue to talk about because that's so important here is just like knowing, especially when you're looking for early signs, certain formats we know have a higher chance of success and scaling because we know that format is proven and we know that format will scale on YouTube. So it has a better chance. And so this is one of the ones, this Discredit Fiber one, that we know works. So when I'm looking at what was tested, what's interesting about this test is background music was a big part of it. And so, Christy, I know you mentioned that initially, that background music is something we test.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that even every team here at our agency is necessarily testing background music as almost like a go-to test. But I know for Sammy's team, that's something they test early on and it can make a big difference. And so that's something that I want to do more of. Is that something that is more of a go-to for you or do you test it later?
It's so funny because it used to be like the thing that we used all the time when we had the dog offers. It was like the thing to do first. And we've been doing it less and less, but I think it's worth adding because it does make a difference, even though it's like a weird test. You wouldn't think it would do anything to lift it, but it does.
Yeah, and it could also be offer specific where like for this particular gut offer that does test background music frequently, that, you know, they just know that that does work as a testing element. Whereas for some other offers, like it might not make a big difference. So maybe with the pup one, you know, especially it makes sense with a dog offer, that music would make a big difference. But it might not make as much difference with something maybe that is more technical. Who knows? But that's something to consider too. For this particular ad, I think what stands out the most to me is that the spokespeople were tested and the talent matters. So multiple spokespeople were tested on this. And at least I think I see 7 different spokespeople were tested on this. What their team found is that certain spokespeople performed really well on YouTube and others performed well on Facebook. And obviously some of them didn't perform at all. And so what really helped this ad scale to, let's see, $5 million on YouTube and Facebook was that spokesperson testing to just continue to kind of reach new audiences with different personas, you know, going from a doctor to kind of more like a stay-at-home mom to different personas, and that met different segments of the audience. Also, what's interesting about this one is $3 million of testing elements came from CB testing.
Wow.
So that, I mean, that's out of $5 million for $3 million to come from CB clickbait testing is substantial. And so that's something that is a big reminder to me that we should be doing even more CB testing to reach the $5 million mark for some of our ads that are scaling. And I know that's something that certain teams do better than others, or like they focus on earlier, and even certain performance managers kind of use it as like a more of a go-to strategy early on to start scaling, and others might not use it. They might use toppers or they might use something else. But if 3 million out of the 5 million ad spend for this particular ad was focused on clickbaits, that's something that I'm going to do more of moving forward.
Yeah, that's something our team does frequently. I mean, pretty much every single ad that looks like it's going to scale, we test the top clickbaits on. And then even some of the writer creative strategists are getting into creating their own clickbait because they're thinking about their ad and like, what would be the most weird or interesting visual that I could put on the front of this?
Yeah, and maybe, Christy, you can talk about it because I know your team does this really well. Just, I mean, our audience could be familiar with clickbaits. I'm sure they've seen them, but just because it is called different things, could you just describe what makes a good clickbait or maybe an example of one that you know is performed?
I'm trying to think. So recently we're working on a nail fungus ad offer. And so we're testing a lot of different things about nail polish on toenails. So something that's it's just interesting looking, different colors. There's somebody made a clickbait that looks like the toenails made of wood, and there's like shaving away layers of wood until it's like clear, which sounds nasty, but it's interesting. And a lot of those are made with AI.
Yeah. And what is the major ingredient, would you say? Like, I know intrigue is important. Clickbaits typically have the headline at the top and voiceover, usually AI reading the headline. What is a key element with the headline and the visual that makes it work?
It has to be very intriguing and not really give away anything. I think that's the main thing with the headline and the voiceover. Sometimes using a weird voice will help. Sometimes having other like sound effects along with the visuals helps. Just make it really like something that would make you want to stop scrolling. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and call outs to your audience too, to make sure it's speaking to the promise or speaking to the problem quickly. So you are attracting that quality audience from the get-go really helps too, especially if your ads maybe has high engagement, but you know you're not reaching the right people because conversion rates are low or people aren't clicking through, then maybe you're just not reaching the right audience, and you can use your clickbait to call out to the right people.
For sure. Yeah, calling out the problem is one of the easiest ways to do it, just so people know, oh, this is for me. I have toenail fungus.
Hey, just wanted to pop in for a quick break and let you know that if you're interested in signing up for our newsletter because you're enjoying the insights here and you want to get weekly insights directly to your inbox from our team of specialized experts, go ahead and use the link in the description to sign up for our newsletter, Scaling Secrets. And with no further ado, let's get back to the episode.
All right. So again, we looked at, actually, it wasn't even the top 10. It was 16 ads that hit $1 million or more, and analyzed those ads over the last year to see what they were testing. How did they reach that $1 million to $9 million, and what was tested the most? And so then we analyze those results to understand the patterns. And so we're just going to share a couple of those patterns with you because clearly this is working and worth testing. The first one I'm not going to go into because we just talked about it, but it wasn't just that specific gut ad that we talked about that tested CBs. 3 million out of the 5 million ad spend was testing CBs, but across all of these ads, CB was the top engine. And so, we've already said it, but that is something critical to think about if you want to scale is, are you even testing them? Are you testing enough of them? Are you iterating on them? So you're not just burning through the same clickbaits, but you're continually kind of optimizing them and testing, swapping out headlines, testing new headlines to reach different audiences, different images, different visuals, and using that as a full-on strategy to scale.
Okay, great. And so insight number 2 is the format. The format is a vehicle. It's not really a test, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be using them over and over again because you know that they work. We looked at the formats that we have at TNT, and 4 of them out of many have created ads in multiple cells that have, I think, spent over $30 million. And that's just the format. So the types of formats that work for us that we know can work over and over again are hidden anatomy. It's something that's going on in the body that most people don't know about. Myth busting expert, which is like a reaction video to something that's online. Emotional stories, people telling what the problem was that they had and how they fixed it eventually. And podcasts, those tend to work over and over again because it is a format that looks like native content. So your actionable takeaway is to stop trying to invent new formats. Pick ones that already work and use them and go deep into them. And to add on to that, another insight we had is that proven elements are really a hidden asset. So you could have proven clickbaits, proven hooks, proven post texts that are working within a specific account, and there's no reason why you shouldn't test those on an ad that looks like it's going to scale, because those are proven and they will just consistently add anywhere from 20K to 200K to your ad spend. So every winning element from a past ad should automatically get tested into your next ad. That's money that is just ready to bank.
Yeah, I think we can do more of that too, because it's really easy with new ads to get excited and just to want to test all the new hooks, especially for writers. They are excited. They wrote all the new hooks. They want to test them or continue to write new hooks because they're talented and they have a skill set to write great hooks, or continue to create new toppers, new clickbaits. But if we can just test, it's so much easier, an easier lift to test those proven toppers in the proven post text and use what's working. While still working on new testing elements, but use what's already working. And then we also looked at the missed opportunities. What are we missing even as we're looking at our agency? Are we leaving millions of dollars on the table from some of these takeaways? Could we take some of the ads that have scaled to $1 million, $2 million, and actually get them to $10 million off some of these learnings? And I think the answer really is yes, that there are more opportunities based off some of these patterns that we've seen. And one pattern that we noticed, that there's almost just you can call it like a hook starvation on the biggest winners, where the larger the ad spend, the lower percentage of revenue that came from testing hooks. And so that seems like an opportunity to increase testing on hooks and not let that drop off as it scales. More and more hook testing, maybe we get distracted by something else. Maybe it is like we're just doing all the clickbaits, or we're just doing the background music testing and we're not focusing on the hooks, and continuing to do that. And maybe it'd be great to focus on a certain percentage and just know like, hey, as this ad scales, I want to make sure 15% of our testing is focused on hooks. Maybe 5% of that is proven hooks, and then the other 10% are new hooks. But making sure that you can keep an eye on that to make sure it doesn't fall off. And that can make a huge difference in total ad spend.
Another thing you can do on just stacking on the hook starvation is actually hook stacking, because sometimes that works even better. than just having brand new hooks.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I'm just looking to see with all the ads that we dissected if hook stacking was a testing element.
I don't know that we call them out as a thing. I think
there's one that you listed hook stacking, and it could be because it's a newer testing element.
Okay.
In our platform, or maybe it's also could be that people aren't using that testing element when they're testing hook stacks, but I only see one that tested hook stacks. It's a Discredit Fiber, $24,000 on hook stacking. I have a feeling it was happening across other ads, but it just wasn't captured. But I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Okay.
Another pattern of missed opportunities is proven elements gap. Half of the winners don't list proven CBs, proven hooks, or proven post text at all. That's nearly half of $1 million ads, ignoring recycling the library. Each proven element historically can add anywhere from 20K to 200K in ad spend. So that's roughly $500,000 in free revenue left on the table. And why does this happen? It's because performance managers tend to test what they believe will win and what's already proven across the organization. It's kind of a bias problem, not a strategy problem.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
I was going to say that leads to kind of the next missed opportunity, which is just our bias. And I think this is very much true. And this is true for creative strategists, like the two of us. Well, maybe Christy, you're not doing this, but I know I'm biased, and I know, this could be the case also for other team members where we have our go-to strategies. Like we have things that we're comfortable doing and it's proven, and we know that we can write great toppers, and so we're going to test a lot of toppers, or we're very comfortable creating clickbait, or maybe like we know we can write compliant copy that'll get on YouTube, so that becomes part of our go-to strategy. And so I think there is some bias mixed into this that we have to keep top of mind and look at all the data to see what do we tend to test the most and what are we missing out on as a team, because that's just something that, it's a habit we all fall into. And so keeping it top of mind could make a big difference in how your ads scale.
I would say that applies to all writers too, because everyone has their own specialty. And so it might even benefit writers just to trade basically specialties and say, like, show me how you write a topper, or what are you doing with your clickbaits, so that they can learn and test out different formats or different elements.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And maybe a good experiment we could do is kind of just run testing elements for our writers to see, what percentage of their testing is focused on certain tests to see what they're comfortable doing, and maybe like what they're not as comfortable doing, and challenge them to try that and moving forward. So just having this data available to your team is really helpful, so that you know what you could do more of, what's missing, what's not your go-to strategy, what is your go-to strategy, and keep that top of mind. In this conversation, I think we should touch on briefly, we don't have to go deep into this because this is a whole other podcast episode, but we have to talk about talent and spokespeople. Because if we're talking about scaling ads, this is a huge part of it. And we know testing spokespeople is the top testing element for many of these ads. And so it's something we have to keep in top of mind and we can't ignore. And when we looked at the top spokespeople across our top $1 million ads, there's definitely some clear winners. And we test a lot of talent and we test a lot of avatars across the board, but there's certain names that just perform across the entire agency. And so that is something that you have to be really strategic about as you're scaling and thinking about. And I'm curious, Christy, how you think about and you advise your writers to test spokespeople, knowing that some of them, the spokespeople, are very much visible online, like you said, like they're used everywhere, and others maybe less visible. Some are actual human talent, some are avatars, some are custom, some are not.
Yeah.
How do you think about all of this?
Well, so one thing I taught my writers a while ago, they might have forgotten it though. I taught them, like, when you go in to pick an AI avatar, you don't have to just pick the one that has been starred and liked by everyone else in the agency. You can experiment with a random avatar, because number one, they're not being used as much, but number two, you might have a breakout winner that you don't, you're not sure. You wouldn't know otherwise unless you test them. And I did that on a couple of ads where the performance manager's like, why did you use that creepy avatar? I'm like, because he's working. What's wrong with that? I'm like, he's working. I don't care what he looks like. That's cool.
I love that he's creepy.
Yes, it's a creepy podcaster. So that, and then, the same thing with human talent. It's like, yeah, there are a couple of go-to actors that we use over and over and over again, because they can pretty much read any script and we'll get some performance out of them. But depending on the particular offer, sometimes it's good to get an avatar, a person that looks closer to the demographic. that the offer is for.
Yep. And we pay attention as an agency, and we are doing monthly audits of these spokespeople to see, who's performing across the board, but also to capture the new top performers, that maybe haven't scaled as much, but have great ROAS and show signs of promise, but maybe are overlooked because, again, like it's that bias and that habit of just using the same spokespeople over and over again. And that reliability on a few spokespeople rather than trying the new ones like you're doing, Christy. So having that data available to you, whether it's like a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, is something that's important to inform the decisions of your creative team. And that's something that is important to us as we try to expand and not necessarily depend on a handful of spokespeople. We can also look at which spokespeople tend to have lower CPMs. And maybe are more efficient. Which spokespeople, we have certain ones that we know scale really well. Maybe the ROAS isn't typically as high, but we know they can scale. And so just having that information is really helpful to help you make decisions as far as like, actually, we do need higher efficiency here and lower CPM. So we should probably go with this type of talent over this one.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I want to just add on to that is that there's almost like a superstition with writers and performance managers that you have to use certain people or it's not going to work. And that's just not true. You really have to test.
Yeah, that is true. And it's so rewarding when you do see new faces pop up, and such a good reminder. Such a great reminder that our audiences are broad and diverse, and we can reach new segments of the audience with new spokespeople it's just an untapped audience if we're using the same people over and over again, even if they are great at scaling.
Very true.
All right, so let's wrap up with just some takeaways and kind of like this recipe for hitting and scaling to reach these $1 million levels. So let's just run through this as kind of more of a recap.
Okay. So we want to pick a format that already has receipts. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can borrow.
We want to spend a significant amount of our budget on clickbait. It works. We know it.
You can test hooks second, but expect smaller wins per test. And don't stop early on big winners.
We can recycle those proven elements from past winners, right? So the proven hooks, proven clickbaits, proven toppers, proven post text, proven talent, as long as we're also testing new talent. But don't feel like you have to reinvent everything from the ground up.
And once an ad wins, double down on the 1 to 2 elements driving it. There's no reason why you should stop.
And then I think the key out of all of this is to audit your testing mix, just so that you can capture and catch any missed opportunities. You can catch any biases that you have. You can catch those opportunities to scale and things that you may not notice on a day-to-day basis that will show up when you look at the big picture.
And then build a mandatory checklist. So high value elements such as compliance, topper, and proven hooks, clickbaits, and whatever get skipped just because somebody doesn't believe in it.
So Christy, out of all of this, like what is your takeaway as creative strategist, guiding and leading your team? What is something that you might do differently?
So, okay, number one, I would get my writers to pair up and share their secrets to whatever elements that they have mastered with each other.
That's a good idea.
And then number two, maybe put together a checklist of all the things that we know have been proven to work and start going through them and strategically going down the list of elements to test.
Yeah, that's a really, really good idea. I think I like the checklist idea. I will do that. And then also develop the library. I know I have bits and pieces kind of all over, it's like the proven hooks and proven formats and proven clickbait, but organize all of it so it's in one place. And so we can just have it easily accessible as a testing element. That's something that just takes a little bit of organization, but it's definitely worth it.
Keep testing. Don't give up on your winners. You want to make them even bigger winners.
Yeah. And I think just, again, looking at all of our top ads from the past year, looking at the numbers, it's like, why could we have taken this $1 million ad? And could we have actually made it a $5 million ad? What could we have done differently? And so thinking bigger, being familiar with all of these numbers and all the testing elements and the percentages and what you're doing, what you're not doing. And then just thinking bigger about what's possible. It's like, why aim for 1 million when you can aim for 10 million and see what other ads have done and what the teams have done to create those $10 million ads. And so learning from those teams and what they're testing is really key here, and continuing to experiment. All right, Christy, well, thanks for coming on to speak with me about this and sharing what your team's doing, offering to let me borrow some of your assets and checklists that you've already created, and just, offering your insights into what's happening with your writers and your team and what's helped you all scale your ads beyond $1 million. So thank you.
Thank you, Kira.